Today is July 28th, and I am coming out of a lull in terms of like where I was and what I was doing and where the direction that I was heading. I was talking about this yesterday, where I'm noticing cycles of ups and downs, and I believe I'm starting to come out of it. Where for a couple days there, I took a pause on all of the work that I was doing and just allowing it to kind of like roll around and settle in my head. And now that I've taken that time and had some time to reflect, I think that a couple of things that I'm starting to notice is that I'm being I'm able to be more intentional with the way that I'm approaching this work. And I guess it might be funny to think about like doing something without a specific intention. And it's not that there wasn't an intention. I think there is always a um, tar- broad goal, I guess, for Haizhen and this work that I'm doing, and the reason that I want to start a business and to start to help people and guide people towards their true selves, their inner essence, their core essence, whatever. And I think that it takes a little bit of time. One thing that I was noticing was like taking this really big idea of um, showing up as your authentic self is maybe it's difficult to sell in terms of like for me to come out and sell it maybe, and this could be another piece of overthinking. So um, that's fine, I acknowledge that, and I'm going to indulge in it for a little bit of time. But like sometimes I wonder what it is like to show up um, as somebody who is capable. Like how do you demonstrate that you're capable of doing that, right? And I think that the demonstration is through the results of like actually doing that work with people, helping people get to their authenticity or all of this stuff. But then to ask someone if like did the work that I um, engaged with you in help you get to a more authentic place? And in some ways, I'm sure that it does. But the other piece kind of is I don't know that I've worked all the way through. Like, sorry, maybe what I haven't done before is directly guide people explicitly to think about moving more to an authentic and aligned place. It's oftentimes much more around um, how to do things or engage in a way that feels a lot more natural and comfortable. And that's where I was thinking about talking about difficult situations and difficult communication situations, because I believe that the way to have less difficult conversations is to do them in a way where you're doing it from a position of authenticity and from a place of confidence. Like if you are confident in yourself and you know where your position is and where you're coming from, then whatever comes to you, whatever issues might be presented to you, can you can manage them with a lot more stability. And I guess that would bring confidence, right? So with that in mind, thinking about how I can like bridge those two worlds of like saying being confident is like um, having a confident image of yourself and knowing what that feels like. You can then engage in difficult conversations and sit in difficult situations and spaces that you can then feel more comfortable in. So that's kind of like one thing, and that might not necessarily require a pivot of the program, but it might require a pivot of the kind of marketing materials. So I don't know if that's something that I would completely pivot towards. It's a thought that it is in my head, and I know that it's something that I could teach you to do really well, really easily. And maybe that will come up in either these videos or potentially in the Half Truth series that I started. I'm going to be posting them soon. I don't know when, but it will happen at some point. The other piece of this, and one of the things that I'm refocusing on, is this idea of burnout to brilliance, and the core reason that people get burnt out is not because they're not having enough rest and um, like necessarily being stressed and anxious. Like that all adds to that burnout, but the root cause of burnout is doing too much. So, and I smile because I think about DTM, um, the story of DTM is I was in Markham at this movie theater. There's like a area there that's a theater. It's got restaurants and everything. And I was in the bubble tea place Cha Time, and on the wall it said DTM. And for the longest time, I had no idea. Like, we were sitting there, like my family and I, looking at DTM and trying to figure out what that meant. And of course, like I Googled it, and one of the things that came up was doing too much. It's like, oh, okay, like I guess so. Like if you're at a bubble tea place at Cha Time saying, like, you know, DTM, doing too much, have a bubble tea. Like, perfect solution, right? Turns out that DTM actually, in that case, meant downtown Markham, but I like DTM do too much better. So I like that idea, and I like the idea of doing less. So if burnout is caused by doing too much, then what is the too much that you're doing? It's not to say that you're taking on too many tasks per se. You're being taking on too many tasks and projects. Like, we often think about like those things on our to-do list, and you might be taking a lot on a lot of those things. The question then becomes, where is that feeling that you need to take on all of those things coming from? And what I'm coming to is thinking about the things that we're doing too much of that we don't need to be doing, which is to either overthink things. It could be like too much mental activity, too much moving from a place of emotion where things are frustrating and you're spending time being frustrated or angry or upset. And I'm not saying that you need to do none of that. It's just it might exist too much in the current place, in the current environment that you're working in. So if you're overthinking your decisions, if you're not certain of what you're going to do, you're feeling like a lack of confidence in some ways, you're feeling like you're not appreciated, and then you're feeling different ways, and then like you're working to try to show up in a certain way and trying to be too much of this role, like fit into a role that like actually doesn't fit you, or people are expecting certain things of you that don't align with who you naturally are. And when I say naturally are, is like your innate, like this is your inherent kind of like way of operating. If you're operating outside of that, um, then you're doing too much, in the sense that you are potentially making decisions from a place that's not you, you're not self. And when you do that, then you get put into situations where you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling over capacity, because these things aren't flowing. You have to take energy to do these things. When you're overthinking, or like think about like something that you felt nervous or anxious about, or something where you don't have all the information and you're like just nervous about this whole thing. So in addition to living your life, doing your job, managing all of the other things that are going on in your life, you've also added on this layer of like extra thought and extra kind of like acrobatics in your mind. And you, while you might not see it, it takes a toll on you. And sometimes that looks like rethinking and rehashing decisions that already happened. Like, oh, like this situation at work, this happened. What could I have done differently? And those are all really great reflections to have. I think the reflection piece is important, but oftentimes the reflection is tied with guilt or shame. Like, oh, I should have done better. I should have known better. And that whole approach. So understanding where that kind of comes from is like looking, I think the frameworks that I will present in the Haizhen transformation really help to reframe those things as feedback. One of the biggest lessons I learned through my hypnosis training is that there is no failure, it's all feedback. So anything that's happening that you can consider a failure, the failure piece of it is a feeling, right? Like you're feeling like I'm a failure because I like a certain outcome wasn't achieved. And just like I was talking about yesterday, like if you're learning to walk, you must give yourself grace to make mistakes. As a child, as a baby learning to walk, they're not going to walk perfectly immediately. So you have to give yourself that grace and that space. When you don't do that, then you're taking on you're not just receiving the feedback and then doing something new with it. You're taking the feedback that's coming and then making value judgments about yourself, about how capable you are or how good you are in a certain situation. And that becomes a very difficult position to work from. Then you're going to uh, maybe be more apprehensive about going into new opportunities or new conversations. You might be feeling like ashamed of certain results or guilty that something happened. And then that's just one layer of it. Then that leads to all sorts of different actions, right? And that's kind of where the feeling, meaning, action cascade comes in, because you're going to have feelings. You are just wired to always have feelings, and that's where things start. The meaning that you assign to these things is then how you decide what actions that you're going to take next, and what actions you make in the world result in feedback coming back to you that will then cause a feeling to manifest for you to experience. This is just the way that things go round and round and round. So then you can't stop feeling and you can't stop taking action. The thing that you can change is the meaning that those feelings translate into. So understanding the feelings that are not necessarily meant for you to engage with, because if you're feeling it, you're meant to engage with it. Sometimes it's just an observance. Sometimes it's from conditioning, from things that we learn to react. Like we've learned a way of reacting to certain things. And once you learn that, it becomes unconscious. You just do it. Like it just happens. So you might have somebody, like maybe reprimand you at work, like, hey, you didn't do this thing properly. So then you go and you suddenly feel like really bad about yourself. And then maybe the action that you take is you kind of shrink in your role. And then you go home and maybe like you're feeling bad. So then you overeat because like I eat my feelings, right? So if you eat your feelings as well, that could be an action that you take. And then that kind of cascades into a feeling of like, oh my God, I'm doing this again. And then you might put that meaning of like, I'm just rehashing the same patterns over and over again. And then you're like, this is just the way that it is. And then you continue on carrying on those actions in that space, right? So I think I like that idea. It seems clear to me. And I think that it's a clear solution. When I'm thinking about how I've changed over the last number of years, one thing was to first start trusting myself. And the way that I first learned to do that was to trust my unconscious, which is like part of myself. Like you are a conscious and unconscious being. If you look into like what the science says currently, you'll probably find that everything is unconscious, and the conscious awareness that you think is like driving your action is actually just a noticing of what you've already decided. Like they've done some experiments on this, and they've actually measured that like people will do an action before registering the conscious thought or the conscious decision to do it. It's a bit trippy, and just saying it to you and having you take my word for it is one way of potentially like you might not be convinced. And at the same time, just pause and like imagine if this model were true, then understanding how to connect with your unconscious side is really important. And that's what I learned through hypnosis, to understand that hypnosis is a natural process. It's like our unconscious is this huge part that's always working for us, where it's holding our posture, maintaining how we move. Like when I'm talking and making like hand motions, I'm not thinking of like I'm going to take my hand and go like this over and over again, although like maybe I am right now. But usually when you have like hand motions and like you're moving while you're talking, or like you're agreeing with someone and you start nodding without thinking about it, these are unconscious things, that like unconscious ways of like driving your action. So then if you can understand your unconscious is this natural part of you, and hypnosis is a way of accessing that unconscious, then you'll begin to understand that your unconscious is there. It's always listening. Its purpose is to protect you and do what's best for you. And it will give you the most honest answer if you can listen for it. That honest answer will come softly, and it often will feel like it's like something's off. Like maybe I shouldn't be, like it's wrong in some way, and we want to edit it. So like if I were to ask you a question like, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? and you might instantly have like an idea of like what you actually want to do, and then you might pause and say like, well, that's not a reasonable dream, so then I'm just going to put it aside, and I don't want to share it out, because if I say it out, like somebody might laugh at me, people might like think that it's crazy and everything. So then you want to understand that that voice is the accurate voice. It's giving you the honest answer. And whatever that answer that comes up is, if when you go with it, then you'll notice that you become much more aligned. So I began listening to my unconscious a lot more, and it takes a lot of mental pressure off, which is to say, instead of always like thinking that you have to think into the right answer, you can allow your unconscious to listen, take in the information, and then present you with an answer. And that's a nice way to work. And how do you do that? It's just through various, there's kind of like, you have to build a rapport with yourself and begin to trust yourself so that you can trust the answers that are coming through. Okay. How this ties in with human design is the authority piece, because the authority is literally that unconscious part of you answering and just like moving you towards yes or moving you towards no. So then the level of resolution that human design gives is to understand how your unconscious communicates with you, and we each have different ways, right? So for myself, I have a splenic authority, so I have that kind of like instantaneous knowing in the now. It's like an intuitive hit where I would experience like just like this is like the right answer for me, type of thing. And that really is kind of similar to that description I just gave you of like the unconscious giving you the right answer, and like you just feeling into it and having to trust and listen to that intuition or instinct. The other big piece, another common authority, is the sacral authority, which is a gut feeling. So that gut instinct is the thing that really says yes or no, and it's oftentimes it's a generator authority, and it's oftentimes associated with a audible uh-huh or a audible uh-uh. And this is just how we react. So you might like be presented with a situation and just react unconsciously and be like, oh yeah, like that's what I want, and you get like a full body yes, and your whole body is like kind of moving like this. I'm exaggerating, of course, but it could happen. So then understanding that piece of human design where it's like filling in the nature of your unconscious experience. And it's really interesting because those are just two of the 9 different authorities. Wait, 9? 7 different authorities that you could really experience. So then when you understand what that is, then you can start listening for it and then using it to test out your decision making ability, right? Like it will guide your choices. And when it guides your choices, you can then reflect on the outcome of those choices. It's the feedback that you're getting. And from that feedback, you'll either feel into your signature theme, which could be like satisfaction or success, or you feel into your not self theme, which might look like frustration or bitterness. I'm just giving a small subsection of all of this now. So there's lots of these things, like these things all come together really really well, and ultimately what it leads to is you doing less. You are literally doing less to be the person that you already are. When we're doing too much, we're doing too much performance, we're doing too much trying to live up to other people's expectations and really not listening to who we are at the core. So I will continue on with that. I think that that's a place that I will go, and I think that message is much easier to connect with, because like if I were to tell you like I could help you understand who you are meant to be at the most authentic core level, you might be like, oh, whatever, right? But if I tell you like you're burning out because you're doing too much, and the things that to be yourself, you actually are doing less of the things that you were told that you need to do, should do, roles that you need to fit into, and expectations that you're held to that really aren't yours to ascribe to. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. I think even like space wise, then like the last little bit was a little bit like the last month was pretty busy, because in July we have like one of my kids' birthdays, also my wedding anniversary, so there's a lot of events and kind of like going around, plus it's summer, so then like doing our best to go out and have activities and spend time together as a family. And then even just like recovering after like 18 months of school is like I just want to sit and watch television or movies sometimes, which I have done a lot of. So now moving into August, it's kind of like this lull in the summer month. It's like a little bit of that, like, okay, like right before we go back to school. So there's like we'll go back to school or work starts up again. Like I work in a university setting. So that kind of happens. So there's a bit of time there and like space I see in the next little bit. So I'm going to continue unfolding into that and expanding into that space. So in addition to that, moving that message out there, continuing to be consistent with this, continuing with the Half Truth series, and then um, connecting with more people who are interested in doing this type of work. Um, I think I do like the idea of a beta test for this program, and that's the direction that I'm going to move into. So we'll see where that goes. I'll continue on. I'm sure that I'll keep going through some high highs and some low lows, and that's okay. It's all part of the journey. So as I journey on, please follow along with me. If you found this interesting and you want to follow along with my journey, please like and subscribe. If you have some thoughts or questions, please drop it into the comments below. And we'll see you next time. I'll see you tomorrow for the next one of these things.